Welcome, everybody, back to the Amateur Experts Podcast, where we are experts on absolutely nothing, but we are experts on something. And I am an expert on the podcast we're going to talk about today. Really excited, of course. We're doing our 8-week division preview for the NFL. We made it all the way through the NFC. By the time you hear this, our last NFC podcast for the NFC East, if you care about that division at all, will have dropped. But this is your host, Landon Oliver, here with my co-host, Andrew Scott.
Yes, sir. It's good to be back, man. It's good to get out of my comfort zone a little bit because I'm a lifelong Rams fan. I'm very familiar with the NFC West specifically, but just the NFC overall. And now we're getting to I consider myself a pretty hardcore football fan, but I'm definitely more familiar with NFC teams than I am AFC teams. So we got to hit the 4 divisions I'm most comfortable talking about, and now we get to jump into this side of the NFL I'm not as familiar with and just dive right into the part we are the most familiar with. So
yeah, well, when it comes to the AFC, I'll use the quote, "Welcome to the Thunderdome." Because it's a grind out here. There's so many good damn teams, and where the NFC is definitely more top heavy. You got 1 or 2 really elite teams, and then everybody else is just kind of trying to play catch up. This division is, this conference, I shouldn't say division, but this conference is just insane. It's loaded. Every division has somebody that you could realistically see coming out of this conference. And some divisions have multiple teams. So yeah, well, we're starting with, of course, the AFC South. If you're on YouTube, you can see I'm all decked out to talk about the AFC South today, and specifically just one team in the AFC South, because if we've learned anything over probably the last 2 decades about the AFC South, it's that there's one team and then there's everybody else playing catch up. So,
and this is not co-host fan bias while we're doing this division either. We started this whole 8-week process with the NFC South, and we're just following the footsteps in the AFC that we took in the NFC. So this was not Landon pulling the fan card or anything like that, even though if it came down to it, this is our damn show. So if he wanted to do that, we could have done that. But
yeah, like if we want to do a podcast just on the Rams and the Colts every week, like
we can do that.
I will do that. You don't have to listen.
Right. But it just so happened that the first division, the lineup just happens to be, our resident Colts owner gets a chance to do his thing and to hate me just a little bit more today. So,
yeah, I definitely think that there's definitely bias on both ends here. So we will see.
Let's just jump right into it then, man. Whenever we did the NFC West, you let me talk about the Rams first. So,
well, I want to go. Yeah, are we going to go in order of, where we think they're going to finish in the division, or where they finished last year, or are we just going to jump right in to make this a Colts podcast?
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Because we went with the Rams first because we had them winning the division.
Right.
Both of us did. So it was an easy
and we're split on this one. So
yeah,
I guess
for some reason, I don't know why, but
with that being the case,
I'll tell you what, just for entertainment purposes, I'll let you go first, and I want to hear your reasoning why 4 players are better than 53. So you go ahead and you lay that down.
Okay, fair enough. So I do, just right off the bat, I do agree that the Colts have the better roster top to bottom. It's the same thing I said on the last podcast whenever we were talking about the Washington football team versus the Dallas Cowboys, and I picked the Dallas Cowboys to win that division, despite the fact that I thought the Washington football team had the better roster top to bottom. And this was a very close race last year, as you well know, both teams finishing with the same record and the Titans winning the division on a tiebreaker. And I expect the same. I expect it to be the same story this year. I do think this is going to be a very, very close two-team race with both teams really having a chance to make some noise in the playoffs as well. But I don't think that this is just four good players. Now, granted, they do have four really good players on the offensive side of the ball. But I do like I do like the draft pick they made and Caleb Farley last year. Now, granted, there's injury concerns with him, just like there are with several players on the defensive side of the ball that they have here. But I did like that pick a lot. And if he is healthy, I think that he would be a really nice compliment to Janoris Jenkins, who is a very big wild card, but is somebody that, as a Rams fan, I was just a huge fan of watching him play. And he's certainly not what he once was. He might only have a couple picks this year, if that. But I do think that can be interesting. I still think that Kevin Bard is a fine player. I like their linebacker room. I think that it's fine as well. The thing that really concerns me is up front for them. Because I'm not going to I'm making my projections assuming health, and that's a dangerous thing with this team. But assuming health, I do think that this is a somewhat better defense than last year, which isn't saying much, but I do think it is somewhat improved. I just think the offense can be so incredibly good with Tannehill and Derrick Henry and AJ Brown and Julio Jones, and we'll see what the tight end room comes up with Jonnu Smith being out the door. But and I do think that their offensive line is kind of iffy, but with all the pieces they have on offense, I think that as long as honestly, the thing that makes me the most nervous is the play calling. That's the part of this that doesn't feel great, because Arthur Smith was so good. He was masterful. I mean, I think this was the number one offense in football. So it's not like they can really go up from last year. They can only hope to sustain what they did last year. And that's what makes me the most nervous about this pick. But with them staying in-house, my hope is things don't change too much. And I do think, I think Bud Dupree, I know that there are some question marks on his ability to do things on his own. But I do think that he will at least bring some type of pass rush presence that they didn't really have at all last year. So the pieces they brought in on defense, say what you want about it, if you thought they overpaid or not. I don't care about any of that for making projections for just this season. But just in terms of this season, I do think that they are better in that aspect. Not better than the Colts, but just a better team than last year. And so that the biggest question mark for me really is just, can the offensive play caller for this year even somewhat keep up with last year? Because I think that they've got the pieces in place, and something that I really think is going to go in their favor is, I've talked about on a couple of these shows already that I like to use Mike Clay's projections for strength of schedule, because he uses his team projections and looks at what the teams have in place this year, and not just go off of the records that the teams had on the schedule last year. And he has them with one of the top 5 easiest strength of schedules this year. So I think the talent they have on the offensive side of the ball, mixed with their projected to be, rather easy schedule. And, granted, part of that's probably having 4 games against the Texans and the Jags, but, those division games can be questionable. But just all those factors kind of, and I'll get into why I'm picking them over the Colts once we talk about the Colts. But that is essentially the pieces that I like about the Titans.
Okay, so now I will move on to, I guess, an unbiased, literally, like for real, like an unbiased viewpoint of the Titans, which, believe it or not, I can actually do. And of course, naturally, anything I say, like if I were to say basically everything you said, I would get labeled as a hater, even though you're picking them. But anything negative I'll say will be labeled as me being a hater Colts fan. But look, the honest truth is there are a lot of question marks outside of really outside of AJ Brown, Derrick Henry, and Ryan Tannehill. Because as great as Julio is, and as great as he's been in his career, he has question marks. The health has been, granted, he doesn't miss a lot of games, but even the games he plays, he's never 100%, which is, and it's already kind of reared its head already in training camp. But I do think he'll be fine. I'm not worried about Julio at all. That's the least thing I'm worried about. The offensive line, I think, they don't get enough credit for what they do. I do think they are an average offensive line, especially with Luan back. I don't think they're a top 10 unit, but I think they're average. And I think with the type of skill position players, that's all you need, especially with Derrick Henry. You just need an average line.
Right.
So I'm not too worried about the offensive line. The right tackle position does worry me a little bit, but outside of that, I think it's pretty strong. Where it gets so hard for me to buy in with Tennessee is on the other side of the ball on the defense, because I know I kind of echoed this sentiment whenever they made the Julio Jones trade, and I got shit on for my take on the podcast again, because they don't need help scoring. That's not what they need. They don't need another receiver. Yes, they lost Corey Davis, but
I did think they needed another receiver.
Well,
honestly.
I'm just saying, like, they can get other receivers that don't take the capital and the cap space that Julio Jones takes.
Right.
They're very, where their biggest issues are on the defensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. Now, they went and addressed some of those with more players with more question marks. As much as I loved Caleb Farley as a talent, and I think when healthy, he would probably be both of our number one cornerback if 100% healthy, in the draft last year. But the fact is, you got a dude with multiple injuries and now multiple back surgeries. So, and I don't want my cornerback, who I'm projecting, back surgeries are not an easy, little surgery to deal with. That's so we'll hope all these guys are healthy. Bud Dupree, even when healthy, as much as I love the fact that he went to Kentucky and he's a Kentucky player, and I'll always root for him no matter what, because he's a Kentucky guy. But I've just never seen it. Basically, sure, like, can he be semi-productive when he has TJ Watt on the other side of him? Yes. You look at the splits that he's played without TJ Watt, where he's getting more attention, focused on him, and it's abysmal. And then on top of that, you're coming off an ACL tear as well. He's working his way back this year from an ACL tear, on top of now being the focal point of a pass rushing defense. That's a big question mark. I love Jeffrey Simmons on that defensive line. I think that guy is a monster. Possibly he's going to vault him into top 10 defensive line player this year with another productive season. There's, big question marks there at cornerback. I know you said, Janoris Jenkins, but he has not really been that good the last few years as well. He's really struggled. No. Mm-hmm. Like I said, so basically they're just relying on Caleb Farley 100% recovering from multiple back surgeries. And that's where they stand on that. I do like, what's the other safety that they took in the draft? I can't think of his name. It's on the top of my head. It starts with an A. No, it's not. It's not Hooker. They took a safety in the draft that I actually was really high on here. Let me pull it up.
Was Elijah Molden from this year's class?
That is it. Yeah, I really like that pick for them. I think he's going to be a really good player. So maybe he can kind of quell some of the issues. But yeah, it's basically it just comes down to, I think the defensive side of the ball, when 100% healthy, is slightly below average. And if they're not 100% healthy, then you're looking kind of basically where they landed last year, which was one of the worst defenses in the league. If you have any of those pass rush, like if Jeffrey Simmons or Bud Dupree or
Harold Landry.
yeah, Farley, Landry, if any of those guys miss any sort of time, then they're in deep trouble on that defensive side of the ball.
Mhm.
And already they're going to have to outscore every team they face. They're basically going to be in shootouts every week. So, I mean, it's not that I don't like the Titans. It's that there's so many reservations with this team. Like basically everything has to go right for them to be an elite tier team. And you would think that, trading for Julio Jones, that, there's people that are putting this team up there with Kansas City and Baltimore and, with some of these other teams that you hear about. And, yes, I'm a Colts fan. I get it, but I just don't see that type of a roster. I think they have,
No, I don't agree. I don't disagree with that at all.
I
I
think,
think
I think
Kansas
they
City
have
and
the
Buffalo
top.
and Baltimore are still kind of in a tier by themselves, I would think.
I think they've got um, three. Yeah, I mean, you can even argue Tannehill, I guess. I know he gets a lot of crap, but that guy's been money, for the last 2 or 3
Yeah,
years.
last 2 years he's been incredible.
So, I mean, you could argue that they have 3 to 4 of the top 10 players in the division. And, it's kind of hard to argue that. The rest of the roster is where I have no, good feeling towards. I look down that whole roster and it doesn't give me much hope. You're basically asking those 4 dudes to carry that team, the entire team. And like I said, if any of those defensive players go down, it's going to be tough sledding. If any of those offensive players go down,
Oh
then
yeah, it's a wrap at that
yeah,
point.
then you're looking. I mean, you're counting on 4 dudes basically that carry your offense, and technically, I guess, kind of help your defense out by, their defense was bad last year, and that's with a running back that had 2,000 yards,
Mhm.
with clock control. So, heaven forbid any of those 4 guys go down, and I mean, there's just too many question marks. Where, as like with the Colts, I look and, I know you've already kind of said it. I think from top to bottom, and I mean, let's not act like the Colts don't have, elite type players too. They have multiple all pros on both sides of the ball. Um, it's it's just a more, I guess, complete roster to where one injury outside of Carson Wentz, which is basically, I'll get to that in here in a second, but one injury will not completely derail that season. Um, it's the Carson, basically with the Colts, which I'll go ahead and let you talk about them because I'll talk about them, but that's just where I kind of stand on the Titans. But I know for me with the Colts, it's just the roster construction is a lot more sound from
Mhm.
top to bottom than the Titans are. And I'm willing to, and same thing I did with Washington. I'm willing to take the elite defense, the elite defensive line, the elite offensive line, the elite running game. I would rather put my chips in those baskets than, you know, hope, basically. So that's just kind of where I stand on that. So now I'll let you get on to your next points.
Yeah, I mean, before, and granted, it's where it is, it shouldn't be an issue moving forward. But before Wentz got hurt, I wanted to pick the Colts to win this division because I am a long noted Colts fan or Wentz fan.
Oh, slip. We got it on
And
camera.
yeah, I am a long noted Carson Colts fan. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, I have been a Wentz supporter for a long time. I want to see him succeed. But it's just, man, seeing him go down and have to have surgery again just makes me nervous because I'm not, again, I'm assuming he's going to be healthy because whenever I'm making these projections, that's what I'm going to go off of. And just mixed with the last time we saw him on the field, it just wasn't very good. Now, I do think that he's going to have a much better year this year because he's with the play caller that he saw, the best success of his career. And he's behind a very, very good offensive line. So he's not going to have to run for his life every single snap like he did in Philadelphia last year up until the point where he got hurt. I'm hoping for a bounce back. And if Wentz bounces back, gets back to like his 2017, 2018 form and is able to stay healthy, I fully expect him to prove me wrong on this projection. Because I think Jonathan Taylor, I think the Colts have one of the best running back rooms in the league, and one of the best offensive lines in the league. Now, I'm not in love with the pass catchers at all. I know that Chris Ballard came out and said one of the reasons they didn't really pursue Julio that hard is because they're higher in-house than most are, outside on their pass catchers. And I do think Michael Pittman can be a fine player. I'm not completely sold on Paris Campbell, and T.Y. Hilton. I really don't think he has much at all left. And then none of the tight ends really stand out to me much either. So the pass catchers really do concern me. The offensive playmaking ability, outside of the running back position, that does concern me. Now, outside of pass rush, I really don't have any concerns on the defensive side of the ball with the Colts. I mean, they're great on the defensive interior. They're great at the linebacker position, assuming Xavier Rhodes can keep up the elite play that he refounded with Indy. Because I thought he was a dead man his last year in Minnesota. So seeing that resurgence, if that can continue, I mean, they're locked in at the cornerback room. I really don't know much about the safeties, to be honest. But I know defensive interior,
Uh,
linebacker, and corner, assuming Xavier Rhodes keeps up that level of play that he saw. I love all of those.
Julian Blackman, he was in the lead up until I want to say like week 10 or 11. Is kind of when he banged it was something with an ankle, but he kind of tailed off a little bit towards the end of the season. And he was coming back from ACL surgery in college, but he was, I believe, the leader for defensive rookie of the year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, I mean, very, very rangy safety, a lot of picks. Actually won a couple of games for us because of the other team driving down the field, and he ends up picking the ball off on the last drive of the game. So yeah, I'm super high on him. Khari Willis is, if you ever get a chance to watch Khari Willis, he's probably one of the most underrated safeties in the NFL. Like all that guy does is just make the correct play. He doesn't do anything splashy. He's not going to, wow you out of your seat, but he knows where he needs to be, and he does not miss tackles. So yeah, the safety room is just fun. I worry about I worry about the cornerback room a little bit more, just because Rocky Sin hasn't really taken that next step yet. I think Xavier is going to be fine. I'm not worried about that, because the thing with him in Minnesota is whenever they swap their defense up a little bit, it took him out of his comfort zone, the defense that he was used to playing. And with Indy, this is the defense that he had his best years with, was this type of defense. So I think that's kind of why you saw the resurgence last year, was because he was in a more defense that he was more comfortable playing in. But yeah, Rocky Sin, I think he's hit or miss. He's very talented, super talented, but he holds a lot, and basically, he needs to take that next step for this to be an elite cornerback room. But Kenny Moore is, to me, the most underrated player in football. Not just cornerback, the most underrated player in football. There's no reason that guy should not be an all-pro. I know you saw the highlight with the Darren Waller interception last year.
Oh yeah.
That was the big highlight, but that guy does that shit every week. Like literally every week he does. He makes it play. So yeah, I love Kenny Moore. To me, he's the best slot cornerback in football. And there's a lot of people that probably wouldn't argue that. Not even Colts fans. But yeah, outside of that, I'm kind of waiting to see who emerges for that cornerback two spot, whether it's Marvell Tell, who opted out last year of COVID, but he was really, really good his rookie season. I believe PFF had him ranked as like one of the top 2 or 3 rookie cornerbacks in football. Um, and then he, like I said, he took last year off for COVID. He opted out, but he's back this year and he's been making some really good plays in camp. So we'll see if maybe he can kind of take that next step. And then Isaiah Rogers is pretty decent. TJ Carey, a veteran, he actually kind of got banged up in the preseason game, but outside of that, back end of the cornerback room there and that cornerback two spot, there's not really too many questions on defense. I think Okereke, if he does anything, what he's been doing in camp, like he's going to make Pat McAfee look pretty smart for calling him a future Hall of Famer whenever he drafted him, because that dude is, I think he might actually be better than Darius Leonard. He's that good. Like he is that talented. There's a reason he went where he did in the second round. And so this is now with Anthony Walker out of the way, he's going into this is his 3rd season. He's about to open a lot of eyes if he plays anywhere near what he did at the end of last year and where he's going in camp. So I think we could possibly have the best linebacking duo in football by the end of the season. The pass rush, Kamoko Toure is back and healthy. Grover Stewart is a Pro Bowl type of talent there next to DeForest Buckner. Obviously, I don't even have to get into DeForest Buckner.
No,
I mean, if you're a football fan, outside of Aaron Donald, that guy's probably the best defensive tackle.
Yeah, it's him and Chris Jones.
Yeah, and DeForest Buckner was the first team All Pro last year
Right.
with Aaron Donald. So
yeah,
so yeah, I mean, there's no reason to go over him. But then first round pick Kwity Paye,
I do like him a lot, man.
Yeah, man, he's been playing really, really good in camp. He sprained his ankle, just a minor sprain last week, so they kept him out of the preseason game. Probably going to sit out for a couple more games just for precaution, but all signs at the point he's just fine. There's no worry there. And then Darius Leonard, we know what Darius Leonard is, first team All Pro,
highest paid linebacker in the league for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, that guy is he's so fun to watch. He's so fun because there's just the type of leadership and energy he brings to that defense. But yeah, I mean, I think this was already a top 10 defense last year. And they were number 1 for up until about week 6 or 7. I think from what DeForest Buckner was saying, there's a lot of guys in that locker room that are pissed that they didn't keep the consistency they had and that they finished still top 10, but they didn't finish number 1. So he said that's the key for this season, is just being consistent, like not having the drop off that they had after, week 6 or 7. And, I just with how talented this defense is and how young it is, there's a lot of players that are probably about to have their career year going into their 3rd and 4th seasons. And I think we're about to see an ascending defense. I don't know if they'll be the best defense in the league, but I think they end up top 5 by the end of the season. I think this is a top 5 defense in football. Just talent wise, not even me, being a Colts fan, I just think talent wise, they're so sound at every single position outside of, like I said, maybe cornerback 2. And even in cornerback 2, they've got 2 or 3 guys, that are high draft picks that they just need to take that next step in their development. And if those guys do that, and then the pass rush can keep up, with the consistency they had.
That's the part that definitely makes me the most nervous, is just coming off the edge specifically. And if Kwity Paye hits with the draft pick level he was, drafted
Right.
with what he was drafted to produce, then that won't be as much of a concern. But I love what they have in the interior, but coming off the edge, that's really what makes me the
Yeah.
most
I
nervous about
don't.
the defense.
I think. So with Danico Autry actually went down to the Titans. Uh, Defensive end for the Colts. He was very inconsistent as well. He would have some games where he would show up. He'd have 2 sacks and tons, 3 tackles for losses. He just be a monster. And then for the next 3 or 4 games, the guy would have like 3 tackles total. So I mean, just the consistency would be better. The guy I'm most excited about on the defensive line isn't even Kwity Paye. It is Kamoko Toure. He was top 5 in pressure percentage at the time that he broke his ankle 2 years ago. Last year, he was still recovering from it. He kind of had a setback at the beginning of the year. They rushed him back, but this year he's completely healthy. And I think a healthy Kamoko Toure, along with Kwity Paye, Ben Banigou, Tyquan Lewis, who was actually as productive. Actually, he was more productive than Danico Autry last year on about half the snaps. If you look at their stats, it's actually very comparable. They almost are identical, and he only played half the snaps of Autry. So he's going into his 3rd season as well. I think a lot of these young pass rushers are ready to come and perform, and it makes it, having a guy like DeForest Buckner and even Grover Stewart in the middle. I mean, it makes it so much easier to perform as a pass rusher as well. Um, so yeah, the biggest question mark for me for the Colts, of course, is at the quarterback position, which, as we all know, is the most important position in football. The pass catchers, I'm not worried about at all. With Paris Campbell, he gets the injury prone label. I think that's a load of shit because both of his injuries had nothing to do with him. He had a safety go low on him last year and tackle him in the knees and bust his knee up. That's not on him. It's not his fault. And then the year before that, he was coming off a foot surgery. So when he's healthy, and if you go back and watch the Jacksonville game last year, week 1, whenever he was healthy before week 2, whenever I think it was Harrison Smith for the Vikings, went low at his knee. If you go back and watch week 1, the guy's just electric. Like that's all he does is get open. And you even saw it today in the preseason game. There was about 4 or 5 plays that he just absolutely cooked the DB. Of course, Jacob Eason got him the ball on one of those plays, a deep play, pretty big highlight. But yeah, that guy gets insane separation. And if he is healthy, I have no worries about the Colts pass catcher. I think Zach Pascal is a really good option there. Great blocker. Pittman is going to be a dog. Like, that guy was out there all week starting fights with the Panthers DBs. He's about that life. And he loves the run block. And that's the thing with the Colts wide receivers, is they don't have to, I guess, they don't have to go out and put up 1,400 yards and 12 touchdowns, to be successful, because this is a run first team. That's what they do. So I think having wide receivers that just are very great possession guys, good run after the catch guys like Paris Campbell and T.Y. Hilton. And then you already know Mike Strawn. Like, I send you literally text messages every day on that.
Yeah, that dude just doesn't stop making plays. That shit's crazy.
And I didn't know if you watched any of the game today. I didn't know if you saw the highlight today.
I did see the highlight. I didn't watch the game, but I did see the highlight though.
Just mossing a
Yeah.
Carolina DB.
I did see that.
Yeah, I mean, he's literally doing that stuff every day in practice. So I'm really high on him. Ty, it's clear that he's lost a step or two. It's, he's not the same T.Y. Hilton, but I still think he's fast enough to make some plays down the field. And with Phillip Rivers last year, obviously he doesn't have the arm strength to really push the ball down the field. I think that's a new wrinkle in this offense, if Carson Wentz is healthy, that you're going to see come back. And I think T.Y. Hilton is going to be the main beneficiary of it, because he's still quick enough, even at the age of 30. 30's not old, guys, I promise. Uh, but he's still quick enough at his age to where he can get behind a defense. So yeah, the pass catchers, while there's not a household name and it's not AJ Brown and Julio Jones, I think they're good enough to help, especially for the offense Frank runs. They spread the ball around. They don't just throw it to one or two guys. I mean, they'll you'll see Carson Wentz will have 7 completions to 7 different dudes. I mean, that's just how the offense is. So uh the running back room, like you said, it's one of the best in football. I mean, you're literally 4 deep. Uh Whenever your fourth running back averages 5 yards a carry for his career, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And Jonathan Taylor is one one of the best running backs in football. And I think this year he's going to prove that last year was not just a fluke. That guy's just been, he looks like he's taken the next step in practice, because the holes that he wasn't hitting last year early on, he's hitting those holes now, like instantly. Like he knows where to go in the offense. And it's very similar to what I said last year with Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack's rookie year, he struggled at the very beginning. He got more comfortable at the end. His second year, you saw what Marlon Mack can do, come out and 1,200 yards. It's an offense that takes time to learn where to hit the holes at. Once these running backs get comfortable and they stop thinking and where they know where to go, that's when they take the next step. Well, that's what's scary about Jonathan Taylor, is he was still learning last year. He's learning where to go in the offense, where to hit the hole, how to run in that zone scheme. Now he knows. So so that's terrifying. That he wasn't even playing at his potential last year. The biggest question mark is Carson Wentz. We know he struggled last year with Philly. Some of it's his fault, some of it's not. But here's the thing with Carson Wentz and the Colts, and this is where I'm so high on the roster being as good as it is. This is why I went through this big spiel on how talented the roster is. Is because from top to bottom, this is one of the most complete, talented rosters in football. No, not as not up there with the Browns and Tampa Bay. They're not on that level yet, and who knows if they ever will be. But from top to bottom, it is one of the most complete, talented rosters in football. Carson Wentz doesn't have to do it all for maybe the second time in his career. The first time was in 2017, where he had an elite offensive line. He had big, tall wide receivers like Alshon Jeffrey and a burner like Deshaun Jackson. He had a decent running game. They had a really good defense, and you saw the results of that. And he had Frank Reich calling the plays. One of the most underrated things a quarterback can have is a coach that puts him in the position that best suits his need. I know you're going to see it. You've argued, what McVay is about to do with Matt Stafford. It's very similar. We've already seen what Frank can do with Carson Wentz. He's going to play to his strengths. He's not going to overload him. And Carson Wentz, with how good this running game is, with how good this defense is, with how good his offensive line is, he doesn't have to be like he doesn't have to carry the roster. All you have to do is be average. Literally all Carson Wentz has to do is come out and be an average quarterback, because we saw last year how many guys were saying, Phillip Rivers had one of the worst years of his career the year before in, Los Angeles with the Chargers. He comes to the Colts. What did we hear all offseason? Oh, Phillip Rivers is washed. He's got a noodle arm. He's old. They've got a washed quarterback. And Phillip Rivers had one of the most productive years of his career last year and damn near beat Buffalo.
Even while looking like he did kind of have a noodle arm, but it didn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't matter because he had a coach in Frank Reich that could scheme guys open and would make things easier on him. Now it helps. Phillip Rivers is just one of the smartest football players that will ever play the game of football. I mean, the guy he knew what he was doing before the defense got set. But and I think that's where you'll see a drop off. But I think the physical attributes of Carson Wentz will kind of overcome the mental. And I mean, like Carson Wentz is a smart dude too. Like he's very smart type of quarterback. But yeah, it's all going to come down to him. If he plays like he did last year, the Colts will not win this division. If he is average, I'm talking, not even 2017, where he was the MVP before he went down. I'm talking about 2018, 2019 type of, if he is just average, 27 touchdowns, 7 picks. That's pretty much where he landed in 2018 and 2019. Didn't turn the ball over that much, was 25 plus touchdowns. I think if he lands in that 25 plus touchdowns, less than 10 interceptions, I think the Colts win this division. And I think they're very competitive in the playoffs, because I can tell you right now, for whoever's downgrading Jonathan Taylor in fantasy football because the Nelson thing and the Carson Wentz thing, who both are right now very likely to be, only if they miss any games, it's only going to be 1 or 2 games, but they're trending towards playing week 1. You're going to be sorry, because that dude, if he plays anything like he's playing right now in camp against, I mean, like I said, this is against DeForest Buckner and Grover, like against these guys that were a top 10 defense last year, and he is absolutely shredding people in practice. So yeah, I won't go on and on about the Colts. I'll end it here, but yeah, that's just why of course I'm going to pick them to win the division. Yes, it is me sort of being a homer, but even objectively looking at the teams, this is one of the most complete rosters in football, and definitely the most complete roster in this division, without a doubt. So I'm going to bank on 53 guys over 4 guys. That's just where I go. I think from top to bottom, this is going to propel them into being hopefully one of the best teams in football. So they have that kind of talent. So we'll see what happens. But I still think the Colts are definitely a step behind Cleveland, Baltimore, definitely Kansas City, maybe even Los Angeles, the Chargers, if the Chargers are fully healthy. I think they're going to be a very good team, but I would kind of put them in that range. Them and the Titans are, when you could split hairs, with
I agree.
where I think this division is going to go. So now that we focused on the 2 teams that actually matter in this division,
that'll wrap up the show.
Yeah, that'll wrap up. Yeah, exactly. Just kidding, Jacksonville fans. We will touch on you, and Houston fans. I'm sorry
if you're still out there.
Yeah, Jesus, man. But I'll go ahead and let you touch on Jacksonville, because granted, I'm not a huge Urban Meyer fan. I did not like the Urban Meyer hire.
No, me either.
I'm not a fan of it at all, but I really like some of the construction of that roster. I think they've got some players on that team.
I agree. I mean, they did. I don't think they needed it, but they brought in one of my favorite players over the last few years in the draft this year. Whenever they selected Travis Etienne in the first round, I absolutely love his talent at the running back position. Now, I also think James Robinson is a more than capable running back. Now, I think a lot of his production was just off the fact that he was the only man in the room for the majority of the year. But he, used that opportunity to show that he's a very capable running back. And I thought this team had more than enough holes to where they shouldn't have necessarily went running back in the first round, but they did. So now I get to talk about Travis Etienne for a little bit. I love the kid's talent. I think he could be a top running back in the league whenever you look a couple years down the road. I love Laviska Shenault, what he brings to the table. I love the veteran signing of Marvin Jones Jr. I think that is going to do wonders for Trevor Lawrence, who I haven't even said his name yet, number 1 overall pick. Trevor Lawrence, generational quarterback talent by pretty much everybody's, standard, basically, depending on who you ask. So I do think that this team I think they still finish somewhere toward the bottom of the league, but they are definitely, arrow pointing up, assuming Urban Meyer can get the most out of the guys that are here. But honestly, for the most part, that pretty much sums up what I like about the offense. It's Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Laviska Shenault, and Marvin Jones Jr. I'm not a huge DJ Chark guy personally. I would like to see him take a step forward. I liked him a lot as a rookie, but I just, from after his rookie season, I just didn't see really what I wanted to see. But I do love Josh Allen. Of course, shout out Kentucky Wildcats. I would like to see him build on. He in 2019 he had a great rookie season, and 2020 didn't look as good as I hoped it would for him. But I do love Josh Allen. But I do like what they have going on at the linebacker position, and
Love Miles Jack.
yeah, Miles Jack is a stud. No, I thought again this does for just 2021 projections strictly, that if they overpaid or not doesn't really matter. But I like that they added Shaquille Griffin to the cornerback room. It kind of is disappointing to hear that CJ Anderson might already be on the trade block after 1 year. But so we'll see where it goes from that. But I mean, there's some good pieces on this roster, and you can see that. We're going to talk about two teams here at the bottom of the division, and the arrows are pointing in very clear directions for each team. So at least whenever you're talking about Jacksonville, this is a team with the arrow pointing up.
Yeah, I agree. I really like some of the players um, on this roster, and of course, Etienne, James Robinson. While I didn't agree with spending a first round pick on a running back, even if you don't have one of the most productive running backs in the NFL, I never agree with picking a running back in the first round.
Yeah, it's a good point.
But they did, and I do like ETN, and we'll see how he's used. It's going to be really creative. It's just basically this whole thing is going to boil down to, is Trevor Lawrence this generational prospect that everybody has said he is?
Yep.
I don't know if he's going to be that generational. I mean, we'll see. But I really like him. I mean, and I definitely think he has a chance to be. I don't,
I mean, for him to live up, you tell me if you disagree with this. For him to live up to the hype that I've heard be projected to him, he has to be like the best quarterback since Andrew Luck came out.
Yeah, I mean, and from what I've heard, there's people that had him rated higher than Andrew Luck coming out, which
So
to me,
he needs to be better than Andrew Luck to live up to the hype. So I mean, this is
which I mean, look, I mean, all he's got to do
that's
is
a high bill.
all he's got to do is play 7 years and he's good.
Yeah, fair.
We don't talk about that, but
I just thought that was since this is the AFC South preview, I thought that was an interesting point to bring up.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, basically, if from everything we've heard, he's Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, John Elway, Trevor Lawrence. Like, he's in that group of guys coming out of college. That's who he gets brought up against as a prospect. So yeah, anything less than, I would say anything less than Andrew Luck, then yeah, he has not lived up to his potential. Which I mean, I'm not saying live up to his potential, but lived up to his hype, I guess would be a better term. But the guy's got all the potential in the world. So I mean, we'll see. It's up to it's up to that organization to finally become functional and surround him, with the pieces to succeed. And I think they're off to a good start.
Yeah, I agree. What I really want them to start doing, what I want to start seeing is I want to see them start hammering that offensive line.
I do too.
I think that they have.
Don't make the mistake. You literally have the perfect blueprint of what not to do with a generational quarterback in your division.
Right. So, yeah, I think the playmakers they have are fine. So if they're going to address the offensive side of the ball, really just hope they start giving this guy some guys to block for him. Or the pick really won't matter all that much.
Right. Exactly. So I think we both agree Jacksonville if everything goes right, they're still a year or two away from possibly being competitive, but we do like the direction they're going. So Jacksonville fans, good news. And even as a Colts fan, like I don't dislike Jacksonville. I'm perfectly fine with Jacksonville. Um, Now let's get on to the biggest dumpster fire in the NFL. And we won't really touch on the legal stuff. Like, that's not our place. We don't do that on the
No,
show. I'm, I'm not a lawyer, but some people might think I am the way I argue, uh, but yeah, it's not looking good over in Texas.
no, it's not. And if you take if you take the legal stuff out of it, you just look at the product they plan on putting on the field this year. It this is the worst team in football.
Yeah,
Like, Deshaun Watson might make them to where they're like the third worst team in football if he does play all year.
I
To
don't
where
even think.
maybe
Yeah, I don't even think Deshaun Watson is. As great as he is, I don't know if he's that great.
I know that's how bad this team is. I mean, there's literally nothing to like.
I
I
mean,
mean,
look, I
the
actually saw.
running.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
No,
I
you're
know you'll
good.
find this funny. I saw a tweet the other day that put this year's roster up against the roster whenever they first became an expansion team. And they were going through the players and they were like, I think the expansion roster was better,
That's so gross.
which is insane to me.
Oh my God, that's so gross.
Yeah.
I,
The David Carr,
right.
and I don't like, I feel like David Carr, everybody calls him one of the biggest busts in football. That guy had no shot to succeed, like
Mm-mm.
literally none. If David Carr would have went to, I mean, hell, even the Titans or the Raiders, or like, he probably would have had a better chance outside of Cleveland. Um, outside of Cleveland, I don't know if there's been a worse run organization over the last 20 years. Um, I mean, well, I say that the Texans had some really decent years, especially as of late. It's crazy to think that this team actually won the division just 2 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. And then Bill O'Brien, as a at least as a front office. I thought Bill O'Brien was an okay head coach.
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
didn't. I thought he was a good
He
head
wasn't the
coach.
worst coach in the league, but he self-sabotaged himself so many times by being by being terrible with his roster management. And eventually, Bill O'Brien, the coach, could not overcome Bill O'Brien, the GM. Um,
Well, now at GM, or I don't even know who even runs the team, because is it
I can't remember his
Casario
name. Yeah,
or
there
is it
you go.
Easterby or
Yeah, I don't know.
is it is McNair having a say in it?
Whoever's doing it is doing a terrible damn job. That's all that I know. I mean, like, you look at the running back room: David Johnson, Philip Lindsay, Mark Ingram, Rex Burkhead. Like, why are we bringing in Mark Ingram and Rex Burkhead? Philip Lindsay, I can somewhat understand. Why are we bringing in Mark Ingram and Rex Burkhead? Why? And then if you look at the wide receivers, Brandon Cooks he's a very respectable wide receiver, and
I actually like Nico Collins,
I think Nico Collins was a great pick, the rookie. But then outside of that, and bringing over Anthony Miller, I mean, he did nothing.
who's already hurt.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But even prior to the injury, like, he did nothing in Chicago for me to think that he was going to really be much of anything. And then you got Chris Conley, Kiki Kuti, and then the tight end position.
Just
We'll see what Brevin Jordan can do. He's a rookie, but the guys they had in place in front of him is nothing. And then, I mean, do you, other than maybe a linebacker, I don't know, maybe Desmond King. I do. Do you see? Is there anybody you like on the defensive side of the ball of this team?
Vindardrick McKinney.
Like, it's just
He's not a bad player at all. I think Charles Omini, who however you pronounce his last name, out of Texas. He's a pretty decent player as well. Um, but yeah, it's rough, and it's understandable why JJ Watt wanted out.
Yeah, I'm good for him. I'm glad he got out. It would have been a shame to see JJ Watt have to play on this roster. And I hope Deshaun Watson gets out too, because it just again, we're not going to talk about the legal stuff. Deshaun Watson, the player, I don't want to see a quarterback of his talent level waste away on a roster that's terrible. I
Dude, you know
don't.
where Deshaun Watson would fit perfectly in? Indianapolis. You put Deshaun Watson on the Colts roster,
I
that would
certainly would
probably
not have been
be,
picking the Titans to win the
yeah,
division.
that would probably be outside of like Cleveland and
But could you
Tampa
imagine the
Bay.
Denver Broncos with
Oh
Deshaun
my
Watson?
God. Yes. Oh my God.
Like,
Can we hold on? Since we're wrapping up, can we just talk about how great Patrick Surtain looked the other night?
I didn't get to watch any of it, man.
Oh
Did
my,
he did he look good
oh my gosh. Like, I kind of shit on the Broncos for a little while
for
for
not taking
not
Fields?
taking Justin Fields.
Mhm.
I get it. 100%. Like, I'm on board. Um,
Wow, he looked that good, huh?
that good. Dude, go just go watch some of the game. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure you can pull up his highlights. I mean, it was ridiculous. Like, I mean, ridiculous how good that dude looked. And like, I know it's only preseason. I know it's first preseason game. We'll see what happens. Yes, I'm overreacting, but yeah, like he looked like a future All Pro, like as in like he could be an All Pro his rookie year.
Damn. Okay, I am gonna have to go check that out.
Dude, yeah, he looked disgusting.
I mean, that
So
team is that you talk about, like, just take quarterback out of the picture. That's another one of those teams that's just
man, well, their offensive
loaded.
line still has some question marks on it.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
But man,
but
the defensive side of the ball and then the playmakers on the offensive side of the ball, like they
Ooh,
there's a reason why people wanted to take a quarterback so damn bad.
yeah, dude, I think next year too. I've kind of you know if Aaron Rodgers does force his way out, I
Hmm.
think this could be a Peyton Manning type of situation where he goes to Denver, the team's ready to roll. All they need is a quarterback, and they might get one or two Super Bowls out of it.
Yeah, they look like one of, if not the most obvious fit, in terms of teams that have that quarterback
Can you
hole and have a
imagine that
roster ready.
division playing in that
Oh
division?
my God, Mahomes
Mahomes,
versus
Aaron
Rodgers
Rodgers,
two
and Justin
times.
Herbert.
Yeah, I can't forget about Herbert too.
Yeah. I mean, Carr is not terrible either. I mean, I don't like he gets
No,
shit on. I don't think he's a bad quarterback at all.
no, he's fine. I mean, he's not. He's going to look really bad playing in the division with those three guys. But
Right.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be insane.
Yes. That's just typical AFC murderers row.
Yeah, the AFC West would officially be doing their best NFC West impersonation at that point,
Yeah.
if that happens.
Yeah. So I mean but yeah, it's so we don't get too much because I mean we have a whole nother podcast talk about the AFC West.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that another day.
So just to wrap up the AFC South, we'll go ahead. I've got Indianapolis winning, and like I said, this is all relative to health. This isn't projecting
Right.
any injuries. We're talking so if Carson Wentz is healthy, Quentin Nelson's healthy, everybody stays healthy. I have the Colts, the Titans, Jaguars, and of course the Texans picking number one overall.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, mine's basically just a flip flop at the top. I've got the Titans winning the division, the Colts very closely behind them, and then the Jags third, and the Texans as the Texans are on the clock.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, and even with the Titans finishing second, I think both those teams make the playoffs. I think the Titans are a wild card team for sure. So,
yeah, I would have the Colts the same
and
way.
even if the Titans win the division, on the flip side, I think the Colts are
Yeah, this
a wild
team
card
should,
team.
or this division should have two playoff teams.
Yeah,
I
so
do agree with that.
yeah, that's not me saying the Titans are going to suck. That's just we're talking about the difference between 11 wins and 10 wins, or it's literally by the slimmest of margin. So we're it's going to be a great division battle, like it always is. It's clearly a two-team race, and we'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully, everybody stays healthy, and both these teams can perform up to their optimal output. So we will go ahead and end it here, even though, I mean, any more questions on the Colts? You have anything you want to know?
No, I'm good for now, man. I hope Wentz stays healthy all year too. I want to see it because this is the best situation he's been in since.
Repping already.
This is the best situation he's been in since the last time he got to play with Frank. So I just hope, I've already been a little spooked, but I'm glad to hear that the recovery is on the up and up, and things are looking good. I want to see him out there on the field week 2 whenever I'm in the building to watch the Rams and the Colts play. I want the Colts to be at full strength for that game so that I can say that the Rams went in there and stomped them into the ground, at full health. That's what I want to be able to hop on this podcast and say that, not that the Colts, or not that the Rams stomp Sam Ellinger or anybody like that. So
Ellinger, both the guys looked pretty good today. Eason and Ellinger, they both looked pretty decent. So, I mean, granted, they were playing backups, but they were playing with a lot of backups too. I don't even think the Colts backups played. I think we pretty much rolled out like our third stringers in the first quarter, and it just got worse from there. So
right,
because I know by the third quarter, I was looking at practice squad guys, and I was just like, Jesus Christ. So, yeah, if you're watching a preseason game and a Colts preseason game, and there's dudes that I've never heard of playing in the third quarter, that's when you're deep in the practice squad. So,
right.
But yeah, go watch Patrick Surtain's tape.
I'm on the way.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and end that show, and we'll let you do the closing.
Yeah. So as always, first and foremost, thank you for listening. If you're an AFC South fan specifically, make sure that if you're checking us out over on YouTube, where you're able to leave comments, drop down in the comments section. Let us know. I mean, look, if you're not a Colts fan or a Titans fan, I don't really want to hear you arguing that you're going to win the division. But if you're a Jags fan and we missed out on highlighting a player, or if you're a Texans fan, you
want to just vent.
Yeah. Thoughts and prayers.
I'm here for you. I really am.
Yeah. The whole nation feels bad for you. But just make sure to comment. Let us know your thoughts, where you agree, where you disagree. And then, as always, easy ways to help support us that are completely free. If you could like the video while you're here listening to the video, watching the video on YouTube, and then of course subscribe to the channel while you're here as well. And then whenever you subscribe, make sure to click the little bell that pops up, so that you can be notified whenever, like one time a week, whenever we upload a video. Make sure that you're aware of it, so that you can check out, the rest of this projection series, and then whatever we end up having in store during the regular season as we work our way up toward it. So, outside of YouTube, of course, you can find us pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, whatever the case may be. We are most likely there. So, go give us a look over there as well. But, just as always, thank you for checking us out, and hopefully, you guys ride along with us the rest of the way leading up to what is coming so close, with the NFL regular season just right around the corner.
Yes, sir. So, like he said, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week. I believe, what do we have on the docket? Is it the AFC West next week?
It is the AFC West next week.
It is the AFC West. So, get ready for a fun divisional preview, because there's a lot of intrigue in that division as well, outside of course, Kansas City. So we will see you next week. You guys enjoy the weekend.